So, as a solo women traveler, do you ever wonder um, what it's like to find connections while you're traveling, or worry about feeling lonely and wonder what it's going to feel like on your own? Maybe you've always traveled with friends and you haven't traveled alone. Maybe you always traveled with a spouse and aren't doing that this time. I get this question a lot about how do you find connections when you're traveling on your own. So I'm going to answer that question. I have three thoughts. And I am Dawn Pick Benson. I am a self-discovery travel coach, and I work with women who are in the midst of midlife pivots. So I work with a lot of women who are maybe first timers in doing solo travel. And so I want to talk about that today. Welcome to my background. I am in southern Albania in the town of Laura and have a beautiful view of the sea. So, and I actually just experienced an example of how you might make connections or be open to making connections while traveling just this morning. So I was inspired to do this video for you. So the first thing I would say is observation. One of the keys is observation, to just pay attention. So when I'm out and about and I'm in a cafe, sometimes I listen to, is there anyone speaking English? I listen to conversations, obviously if I can understand them. And I also I notice the people around me. So a couple of examples is that I was in Montenegro about a month ago, and I was out eating dinner, and I noticed a couple of tables next to me were speaking English, and they were discussing what to get for dinner, and I just kind of looked up, smiled a little bit, and said, what I'm having is really good. And I do want to say that I am not an extrovert. So for those of you who are introverts and think this would be really hard for me, I'm not either. But I think when we can focus on a small group of people, that's a little bit easier. So just observing, noticing the people around you, noticing someone you might connect with. So in that case, I noticed them. I noticed they were speaking English, and I thought I'm not good with accents in that region. I thought Australia, New Zealand, I'm not sure. And what I did find out is they were a couple from New Zealand. So we had quite a nice conversation. We actually figured out how to ride the bus home together because we were living in similar, like really close proximity Airbnbs. So we actually had this really nice conversation. And so that would be my first thing, is to say to just observe. And the second is maybe along the same lines. It's curiosity, to just be curious about people. I think it goes a long way. So if you're out and about and you're on your own, and you're at a cafe or you're going on a tour, just be curious about people. Ask people questions. You know, I just engaged that couple a little bit. Or when I was in Portugal 2 months ago, I I there was I was on a group tour, and there was another woman who I noticed was traveling alone as well, and she was from Australia. And so I was curious about what brought her there alone. So I just asked her that question. We started chatting about how scary it can be sometimes when you're on your own, or figuring out logistics. I think I talked about her in one of my other episodes. But we ended up having a glass of wine after the tour was over. We had this nice conversation along the tour, and we said, "Hey, what are you doing afterwards?" We have a glass of wine. So, um, you know, you never know what curiosity is going to lead you toward. Um, and one more example of that maybe also they ladder on each other, right? So, another example just today, and my third thing is smile, to engage. So I guess these all three kind of go with each one of these stories, that you observe, you notice the people around you. Is there someone who you might engage with, who's curious, and then you just are curious and ask them questions. You can do the same with restaurant staff, or when you're on a tour. So I think there's a lot of good ways for people who are traveling solo to meet others. You can put yourself in a location or places in which you could meet people. And for me, a lot of times those are like cafes or restaurants. Going on a group tour is also really helpful because often there are people on that tour who are on their own as well that you can meet. Or sometimes there's just couples or families who invite you to dinner with them. I have met or have gotten multiple invitations to Australia before just by a couple and being on a tour and the couple inviting me to have lunch, and then they're like, hey, if you're ever in Australia, you should come visit me. So I actually think sometimes it's easier to meet people when you're on your own. And it's really kind of for these reasons I'm talking about. This this idea that I think we're more observant. I think we pay more attention to the people around us and our surroundings when we're own. Just as women in general, we're kind of on high alert anyway, and watching our surroundings, we kind of learn that. So you're already observant. You're already going to be kind of curious because you're on your own, noticing things that you don't notice so much when you're with another person or with a group. So I think that often being on your own lends itself to meeting new people in a way that you might not do. And I know I experience this for myself when I travel with other people. I do meet less people along the way because I'm engrossed in the conversation with the person I'm with. So it kind of makes sense, right? Um, so we talked about observation, we talked about curiosity. My third one is just smile and engage. That is actually what happened to me today. I was walking on the promenade in here in Valora, and I got to this spot that looked really beautiful. It was kind of a tiki hut looking thing. And I thought, through the entranceway, you could see the sea. And I thought, oh my gosh, that's so beautiful. I'm going to walk toward that. And as I was doing it, I noticed, again, observation, I noticed that there was a woman with a yoga mat who was walking that way also. And so then I got curious and I thought, I wonder why she has a yoga mat and she's going through this entrance. I was already kind of gonna go that way anyway, but I also kind of followed her because I was curious as to like, oh my gosh, is there a yoga class? And so I walked in. Third one, smile or engage. Smile is easier for me. For those of you who are introverts, smile is the best thing for me at first because I am not super extroverted, so I wouldn't have walked as I followed this woman into that area, I noticed all of a sudden there were all these other women and men congregating with yoga mats and blankets and towels and stuff. And maybe if I was more extroverted, I would have said, hey, what's happening here? But instead, I found one person who looked friendly and I engaged her with a smile. And I just kind of smiled at her. She smiled back at me and she said, come here, come over here. And so I went over there, and I think she was the only person in the group that spoke English. Everybody else was speaking Italian, actually. And so she starts telling me it's actually a Tai Chi class. And she said that every Tuesday, Thursday, we meet here for Tai Chi. Do you want to join us? And then she brings the instructor over, and the instructor only speaks Italian. I don't speak Italian at all. But he all of a sudden starts kind of teaching me some Tai Chi and showing me what I might learn if I stayed for the class. And they were saying it's free. We do this when it's nice outside. And I don't know anything about Tai Chi really, although I'm curious about it. And so I said, is it okay if I watch? Because I also wasn't really dressed. They were all in yoga pants and stuff, and I wasn't fully dressed for that. So I started watching it and watching what they were doing. And then I just decided, you know what these movements that they're doing actually might be really good for me. My back's kind of sore today. And I thought, I could do this. I can do this without yoga pants on. And so I stood up and I started joining them, and they all got excited that I was joining them. And so here I am. I know absolutely no one in Valora, but I'm walking down the street. I notice someone with a yoga mat. I get curious and just kind of peek in, catch someone's eye who looks friendly. She smiles at me, invites me in. I end up going to Tai Chi class on the sea. And then I get invited to come every Tuesday, Thursday for as long as I'm here to come to this Tai Chi class. So, all that to say is you definitely can make connections with people as a solo traveler. And even if you're not extroverted, because I know those of us who are introverted think, oh my gosh, I'm going to be alone on this trip and no one will be around, and I am going to be so lonely. And I'm going to say there aren't times of being lonely. There aren't times where you wish you had a partner with you, because those definitely happen. But I am going to say that there are ways to open yourself up to serendipity, to creating a community, to just inviting. When you invite that curiosity in, when you observe, and when you just kind of smile and are willing to engage, I often think we also give off energy. And so if you have an energy of openness toward, I'm interested in engaging with people, I'm interested in what their lives are like, what they're doing, you often get invited into their world. And so today I got invited to this little world of a bunch of people, people speaking Italian, doing Tai Chi on the sea, which I would have never even known had I not been curious and observed it and entered in and had, and, and took the time to smile to that lady. And then her, obviously, she had to engage me as well. But I think that goes a long way. So hopefully that is helpful. Again, those are my three tips for connecting with people as solo travel. Observe what's around you, get curious, and smile, or fully engage. Just basically that openness of engaging. So I hope this is helpful. Thanks for listening. And again, I am Dawn Benson, self-discovery travel coach for women who are in midlife pivots.